Into it. All right. Um, cool. So we're gonna pick up where we left off yesterday. We kind of reviewed or previewed, I guess, the post-fleet patch stuff and building on the fetch gets that we did. So I'd like to revisit those in more detail and walk through some examples of that. And we should have plenty of time to just review stuff, answer questions, smooth out anything that's holding you up, and yeah, get it going. Um, Anything folks want to ask or specifically focus on um, before we jump into it? All right, all right. Cool. Let me see. I don't have my usual setup here, so let's see how screen sharing works. Share screen. Right. Tools there. Cool. So here's our stuff from. Scooch this up a little bit. Way less screen space. I'm gonna let's see. What am I gonna do? So I started up. This is the same one that we were working on yesterday with our fake users. I went ahead and kicked off the server again. Um, so we have these resources here. You can see there. Um, so let's see. When we just made a GET request. Great. So that's going to get us those. If we want to get a single resource again, we can just hit an ID, and that will give us that one resource instead of a big list. And yeah, so we can kick off our live server and that great. So where we left off was, let me close this out. Um, we have errors in here why I left it off. Type error can't be defined. So for server smooth. Uh-oh. Server not running? It is. Get users. Oh, right, because I changed it to make an error so it does not catch last time. That's right. So our resource is users. Bam. Great. Great, great, great. Cool. Yeah, let's do it this way. So I think what I'd like to do first is talk about posting stuff, creating a new record in our database here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add a form to this page here. I'm going to give it an ID and a new user form. And I'm just going to have, so we have name, email, and first name, last name, email. So let's do that. I'll put label in here. You know, yeah, we're going to do it this way for now. I'm going to put all these in divs. I don't think that's the best way to do it, but for right now, we're not studying HTML to know what we're studying. This. Cool. So we have our label, and that label is going to be first name. And there. And we'll do our input text. And give it a name. And let's just duplicate those lines. Let's duplicate this whole thing. This last name. And let's put our submit button in there. close up that input. Did I miss something? That should work. So here's our messy little form. Yeah, it's a bit. Oh, that's what it is. Wow. Input type submit is a self-closing tag, unlike a button. So if we want our thing here, there we go. So now we should be able to put in our first name, last name, email address, and add the user. And of course, if we hit this now, it's just going to reload, and we don't want that. So let's hook up our form like we did before. We've got our new user form. And cool. Close this up here, close this up there. Let's add a listener to our form. Let's do that up here. So we'll get our form. We get our new user form. And this time instead of, we're only going to refer to the form once. So instead of getting it and assigning it to a variable, let's just add the event listener right there. So this is going to be a submit, and I'll get it. And so now we need to write that function. And this will take our event. And the first thing I want to do is just for kicks, I'm gonna target there. So now we can say form instead of event target. And just make sure everything's working all right. I'm just gonna console log out our stuff. What's the first thing we need to do on a submit form actually before we do anything else?
Prevent the default.
Prevent the default, that's right. So since we have the event here, an event prevent default never auto-populates in the IDE. It's always weird. Cool. So now let's console log out what we got. So console log. I'm just gonna do form first name, last name, email. And I'm just separating them with comments here. That will basically, when it logs them out, it'll separate them by spaces. Just a quick and dirty way to do that. Cool. So let's see what we get in our console. Yeah, that's normal. So if I hit return or hit the button, I expect to see my name and address log out here. Let's see. Aha, values. That's why I always forget that. First name value, last name value, email value. Mark, major. Blam, great. So now we know we've got the form working all right. So that's all stuff we already know how to do. Let's look at posting it to the database. So there's really two steps we want to do here, right? We want to add it to the actual database, and we want to add it to this list here. So I'm going to walk through a couple ways of doing that, I think, from simplest to a little bit more complex, but more useful in the long run. And it's similar to the stuff we've seen before. So hopefully some of this will be reviewed and some of it will be new and fun. Great. So I think the first thing I want to do is, I know I'm going to be adding this to the database. And the database has, this is one of the things you can do with a JSON server that you can't really do with real databases. If I make a new record with just first name, last name, email, It will fill in all the rest for me. These will probably be blank, and this will be one or the next value. In fact, since we don't, gender is a construct, and IP addresses should be private. So I'm just gonna blow these all away real quick. Regular expression to do this. Let's see. Yeah. Words. All those with nothing. Blame. And
Is that command just a control F to do that?
yeah, Control F will do that. Why did I put that there? Oh, there's no comments. That's why. Cool. Bloom. Geez, comma, and I'm going to. Regular expressions are awesome, and I highly recommend learning how to use them. They are also arcane, so don't sweat it. It's like reading music. Cool. So now I've just got my IDs, first names, last names, emails, and I hit Option Shift F to format. Super handy. I do it compulsively. Cool. So now we have, we're keeping IDs because IDs are how we're going to refer to that resource when we do a get for just that resource. Cool. So back here, we have the form, and it didn't clear the form, did it? Yeah, so let's clear our form to you while we're here. So last thing we'll do form sets. And that should do us. Great, cool. Now we can do the work. So we're going to be adding, why is it giving me guff? Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, that's all right. Nope, that looks good. Oh, no, it doesn't look good. Did I miss? I missed one. All right. Cool. So now let's see. We want to add our new user. And so we're going to add an object that looks kind of like this one. In general, 99% of the time with JSON databases or regular databases or whatever, usually don't want to set the ID manually when you're creating them. Always let the database take care of that because um, it knows what it's doing and it's really easy to mess up the database if you start throwing IDs in yourself. So I'm going to create an object that I would like to add to the database. And here it is. Well, new user. Is that already taken? Is that already taken somewhere? Yeah, new user. No, I don't think so. Cool. Why is it giving me a red? It's probably already defined. Is that right? Equals. Oh, no. Okay, so I'm going to make a new object here, and we need we need this to match this. So it's going to be first underscore name, last underscore name, and this is going to be our value from here. And our email. Cool. So this is the object we're adding. And so now we can go ahead and do our fetch. So let's do that. Here's our fetch. And when you're doing a post to create a new resource, we can just use the URL for that resource. So API. And now we need to do our options. So we have our headers all set up. We need to tell it the method, which is going to be post. And now we need to send it our data. So that's going to go in the body of the message. Body. And we want to send the new user here. Uh, it probably won't work this way. In fact, I know it won't. Why not?
Is it gonna pass it in like the like unreadable JSON?
Yeah, exactly. So remember, HTTP is a text or string-based protocol, and new user is a JavaScript object, and nobody knows what to do with that outside of JavaScript. So we need to turn it into a string, and so just to like sort of underline that, if we have an object, um, here's our object. So if I look at that, it's going to be our JavaScript object here. If we want to turn it into a string, we can use JSON stringify and give it that object, and that will turn it into, as we see, a string here. And we can pass that string around. So let's JSON stringify that new user and send it along. Great. So this will make our post. And if we take a look here, we'll go to the end of our database. Ermin is our last person there. And I'm going to go ahead and add myself. Loop. Great. Why did it reload? Well, it added me here. Why did it reload? I don't want it to reload. Maybe something wrong. It wasn't doing that before, right? Maybe I'm just overlooking it. Nope. Okay, cool. That's good. I do have the reset. That's also good. Great. I wonder if live service being a little bit too ambitious with us. If I change this. Oh, live server. Live server is automatically reloading when we change our database. That's not something I want. Oh, live server, why do you do that? That's not behavior I want. Interesting. I bet there's a way to unwatch a file or something. But instead, I'm going to work around it real quick by doing this. I'm going to move this file back a directory, so it's out of this directory, and go back here and start my server again. Cool. So this is not the accurate file anymore. I'm going to open up that database file just so we can see it. Great. So I did that so that our database is out of the directory that's being watched. So if we change it, now it shouldn't. Great, good. Oh, that is unwanted behavior. Cool. So let's try that again and see what happens. So all right. Cool. There's that cleared out, didn't reload, and if you look at our database, that's not there for some reason. What have I done? Oh, this also is connection refused. Got a bad response. Boo.
I think you have the fetch still commented out.
Say that again.
I think you have the fetch still commented out.
Do I have the fetch still commented out?
At the bottom there.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Good catch. There we go. One more time. And now nothing showed up there, but we reload, it will be there. If we look at our database, there we are. Cool. So that is adding it to the database. Any questions about that bit before we move on?
I was getting so there were other problems as well, but I was getting like an error message that would say something like with a get slash head can't have a body.
Hmm.
So I'm not seeing it now, but
So yeah, so a standard get like this shouldn't have a body. If you do this, that will definitely give you an error.
okay.
So if you do, I'm just gonna hit that loop. Is that the error that you had?
Yeah, it was that one.
So just make sure that you're not including a body with a get, that your method is posts.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Definitely have done that myself for sure. Cool. Any other questions before we talk about how to get that on the page? Cool. Since this is a fetch, we can do a then on it. So I'm going to do my then down here just for. So any response we're going to get, we're going to need to do the JSON dance. And now we can do our real stuff. And I'm just going to console log our stuff out. So whatever's coming back here as JSON, I'm just going to console log it and see what we get. So again, I'm just going to put myself up again. Have to hit that. So what it gives us is the new object that was created, and we can see it gives us the new ID there. If we look here, 2 different IDs. Look at that. All right. So we're getting that object back that we created. So now we can do that, use that. So the dead simplest way to do this is, hey, look at this. I already have a function that takes a user and puts it on the page. Thinking ahead. So I can actually just say display user. And so since that takes a object like the one we got before, it should just do it. I think it's just going to do it. Like 80% sure it's going to do it. Let's take a look. Hey, look at that, it did it, and it put it in our database. And the tricky thing with this is if we didn't do the fetch and just like add a new user, it would go on there and knock on the database. Don't do that. So yeah, so now we have created a new user by doing a post to the database, sending it a JSON string that we've created from the values that are in our form here. And then after we get it back, a post will return the thing that was created. And then we just take that data, and we already wrote this this fancy little function here because we were already doing that. So we can just call that. And this is kind of like I definitely don't expect anyone to do this like out of the gate. Your first dozen passes of code like this is gonna not look like this. It's gonna be one big long thing. Things are gonna be repeated, but it'll work. It's after you do this a billion times, you get a feel for what you're going to need, and more than that, as you write code like this, you get a feel for what things make sense to break out into functions. Here this is barely anything at all. But kind of know like, oh, we're going to be doing this, like we're doing this a bunch of times in this for each. That makes sense to break out into a function. And since we're doing something that has we are adding stuff and we'll probably be deleting stuff and we're probably going to want to be doing that more than once. So that makes sense to bring out a function, especially if you're writing code and you're like manually calling a function more than twice, like, yeah, that's okay. But like, I wouldn't want to type all this out twice, mostly because I might make a typo and one might work and one might not. So putting stuff in the functions makes it easier to just conceptualize it. It's really like if I collapse these functions, I still kind of know what's happening, right? When I get my fetch, it's going to handle the JSON. It's going to display users. This displays a user. So I can, as long as I name my stuff right, I can kind of figure out what it does. You know, hey, for each one of these things, we're going to display the user. Great. Yeah, but again, don't expect to do this right off the bat. Write it so it works, and then go through it later, and or as you're adding more functionality, and say, "Oh, this would be a lot easier if I broke this out into a function."
I have a question. So we have two fetches on here right now. The one we just did that's at the bottom, that is creating the new item. And so, like, for example, in one of the labs, right, it gives us like we're supposed to post new items, but it starts with nothing, right? So there weren't any items. Do we still need, in that case, that first one so to like keep the items on the page?
So you're saying, you know, if we have,
Like if this was just like an empty array.
yeah, just like that. Yeah, so need is a weird word when we're talking about this, right? Because you only need to do what you have decided that you need to do, right? Or your client or your project manager decided to do. We decided for this one that, hey, we're going to, when the page loads, we're going to list all the users. You know, if there's no users there, let's put an empty list there. Great. If we don't care about that, or want to have like a thing where they can click and toggle it on off, or we want to have a different page, then yeah, you wouldn't need that. In our case, that's what we've decided that we want to do. But there's no need about it one way or the other. You only need to do what you've decided that it needs to do, right? Does that kind of answer what you're asking?
Yeah, I think so. So if it were empty and we were just like starting to add things to it, would they continue to print, or maybe that's the wrong word, but would they continue to display here without that first fetch?
Yeah, so the important thing is that it has the list, because right now, when we start off, our list is empty. And so let's see, so we have an empty list where you're saying do a fetch, and then we're displaying stuff in the list. There's nothing there to display, so it's empty. Cool. When we add a new user, we're going to grab the data, create a user, post it to the database, and then add it to that list. So if we look at the database here, I'm going to make sure that I can get this back. Great. Look at the database here. We can add that stuff. There I am on the list, and now I'm also in the database. So yeah.
And then would it still do all of that, add to the database and add to the page, if we did not have that get, that just regular fetch at the top?
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, it would, because this is the part that says when we load the page, display all the things.
Cool.
It's a little interesting because right now, so here's our form. If I add someone else, it's going to show that person and whatever else is in the database. So, or no, it's going to show just that person because we didn't display all the other stuff in the database. So this is only showing the new users.
Awesome.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
But both of them are in the database. So if we look at there's everyone. Yeah, so this is just like saying, hey, see what's in the database first, and then we can add stuff. Cool, yeah, interesting question. Thanks. Hope that helps. Other questions about this stuff before we make it a little bit different?
Just a quick question. For the method, so with get, post, delete, those are always going to be under strings, or is that how we write them out to Java?
Can you say that again? I'm not sure I understood what you're asking.
Sorry. You see how method you have post in quotations? That's just mandatory for like any like get, post, delete, or
yeah. That's always going to be a string. Yeah, because otherwise it would be looking for a variable. or constant name post. We don't have one of those. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, thank you.
Cool, cool, cool. What else? All right. I want to, before we move on to delete and patch, which are very similar to this, well, kind of similar. I want to talk about more about how we're managing our data. So, kind of like what we said before, right? Because if we don't display all this stuff, we're only going to display the new ones. And that's because, kind of like we talked about last time, we've got this concept of our data or our model and the display of that data or the view. So ideally, those are going to be separate things. We'll have our data separately, and then we'll use the view to display that. In this case, our view is the HTML page. And right now, we're kind of storing, we're getting our database we're getting our data from the database, but on the page, we're kind of just storing it in the HTML, right? If we look at our users here and look at our elements, like the only place on our page where that data is in here. And so if we needed to, I don't know, get our list of data and use it to populate something else, send something else, if we wanted to remove stuff especially, it would be more difficult to do that without having that in an array or something. And I think that's what I'd like to do. So I'm going to separate out our data and our display. So I'm going to, and this is kind of what we did in one of the other sessions. So hopefully this will be a little bit of a review, but it's always good to just keep it in mind. So I'm going to create an array, and I'll call it user array, because that's what it is. And it's going to be an empty array. I'm using it as a constant because we can, as long as we don't replace the entire thing, we can change the stuff inside it as long as we're not replacing that array. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently now. So instead of displaying each user as we get the data in, I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to make this a let because that'll be easier. So I'm going to, once I get the user array, look at that, user array. I'm going to say data. This is so bad. We're users. We'll call it users. So that's our users. So I'm just going to say user array equals users. So now we've stored this in a page level variable, like I said, quote unquote global. So it's not going to show up on the page right now because we're not putting it on the page. But if we look at the console, we can actually look at our user array and we can see that the data that we get back. So now we have that in there. If I want to add stuff, like we have those methods available to us, right? We have display, we have display user. So I can say display user, user array 1, 0 me. So I can like just put that on the page by grabbing stuff out of an array. And so that's what I'm going to do in my code here. So after I assign that to the users list array, I need to display that. And so now what I'm going to do is just, and this is a place where I kind of get a feeling. I'm going to say render users. And just, I don't really need to, but yeah, I'm just going to do it like that. So render users is going to be a function. Yeah. It's not taking any arguments because we're just going to use this global array. And here, oh, look at that. You can do the exact same thing. So in this case, our user array is this global list that we looked at in the console. And now we're just saying, hey, do that. Display the user list again. And so this is interesting, right? Because it feels like we're doing the same thing just with extra steps. Instead of just putting it directly onto the list, onto the page, we're saving it off first and then rendering it from that list. Feels like the same thing, extra steps. But there we go. It's doing the same thing. So I'm going to, instead of when I add the new user, instead of just putting it on the list, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, let me get my JSON. And first I'm going to add it to the user array. And I'm going to call this new user. Yeah, I am. Apologies. It's fine. So I'm going to push that onto the array. So now when I create a new person, oops, not putting it on the page, but if I look at the user array, it's in there. So now all I need to do is render that array again. Look, render users. I can do that again. There's one thing that I need to change first, though. What do we expect is going to happen if I just do it like this?
It's still an.
Say that again.
Is it because it's still an object?
It's actually great thing. So this is the user object. Our list is a list of user objects because we've turned it from the string into the object. So this is we're pushing it into our list on the page. But yeah, good thought. So if I add a new user here, it's going to add it to the user array and render it out, but we didn't clear out this list first. So that's all we need to do is in render users. Render users is we're going to just put all the users on the list in the page. And so the only thing we need to do before we do that is where's our list? Did we draw it out here? User list. User list. There it is. So we've got our user list here. So we just need to clear it out. And again, there are many ways to do it. You can just set inner HTML to nothing. That will do it quick and dirty. Other people, nerds, might complain about it, but it works. And so now it should just add that one to the end. Great. And really, what it's not doing is not just adding that to the end, right? It's adding it to our list, and then it's removing all of these, and then it's writing out the whole list again. Again, seems a little bit inefficient, but it's no one's ever, you didn't see anything happen, right? No one's ever really noticed this. And in fact, that's exactly how React works under the hood. So there are weird things that seem like they're going to be too slow for some reason, and our kind of programmer brains, we think that it's fine. Unless it becomes a problem, it works. So yeah, any questions about that part? And you're definitely going to see this guarantee, probably even in the code challenge, I think. There'll be a thing where there'll be like a like button or something, or your increasing account or decreasing account, and there'll be a number displayed on the page. And your first instinct will be to, when that changes, grab the value out of the page and then write the new one in. I encourage you to think about keeping that data separate so you can just display it without having to go through all of that extra potentially error prone stuff. Right, because if there is say we have a number. Oh yeah, let's do this. I think this is a good demonstration. In our where is it? Let's do this. So in here, let's put in a span maybe equals. And we'll set that to 0. So now when we look at the page, and let's put a space. So So we want to put a count of the users in here. So now that we have, so if we didn't have that list, we would have to like keep a counter and add to it every time we added a new user. And then if we deleted stuff, we would have to reduce it. And then, or grab the value out of the page. We would like select this element, grab this value, and then try and add one to it. If we just add, this is a fun thing. We can say document get element by ID, and that was user count, right? Is that right? User count. Cool. So here's our user count. We would have to get the text content of this. Great. So that's 0. So if we wanted to add to that, we're going to increase that by 1. What's the new count going to be?
Is it going to be a string of 0, 1?
It's going to be a string of 0, 1. And if we do it again, that's if we pull that out and did it again, it would be the same thing. So we can, check and convert it to a number and all that, which would be great. But then what happens when the designer changes it and puts the number over here or something, or puts, just does it like without the span? You can't really count on that not changing. You can't really count on, basically, you don't want to keep your data in the page, in the HTML. You want to keep it in your code. So we would make a count variable and keep it there maybe, or now since we have a user array, we can, how can we get a count of the number of users that we have here?
Array.length.
So we know we have 5 users. Cool. So when we render out the users, now we can do this. Now we can, I just wrote it out here, didn't I? We can do document, by the user count. And we can say length. Still right. And so now going from a number to a string, way easier. It just knows what to do. And so now, in theory, yeah. And now when we add a user, that is automatically going to go up because we're working off of data instead of having to do a whole bunch of rigmarole pulling stuff out of the page. And again, this is like the simplest case. Real cases will have a bunch of stuff displaying somewhere, so it's going to be even worse. So keeping your data separate from your display, super pro. Cool. I think that's about all I wanted to do with that part here. Any questions? Awesome. Let's see. Cool. So doing a delete. Oh, let's see. We did a post. Boom. Let's do our. What's the easiest way to demo this? Yeah, let's do our delete. We might leave the patch as an exercise for the user, but it'll be similar. And I'm pretty sure the patch isn't on the code challenge, so technically don't sweat it. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. No promises. Let's do a delete. So I think the way I want to implement that is maybe put like a button, put a button in front of each one that we can click to delete. So let's do that. And we can just change our display user here. So let's see. Display text content. let's do this. Why don't we? Yeah, easiest way is gonna be, let's put it on the end. So we'll say delete button. Set the that, and we will throw it on the LI, I guess. Hey, pretty buttons everywhere. So we can click these buttons, they don't do anything. Cool, so let's make it do something. We're gonna listen for a click. And let's make this, oh yeah, delete user. Which means we need to add a function. Let's close it up there and add it right here. And so right now, let's just console log out and let's do the event target so we can see what we got. Yeah, interesting. So cool. What's up? Click. Hey, there's our button. 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 What does this not give us that we need?
It's not showing the user info that's attached to that button.
Yeah. And so this is a case where it might not make sense to make a separate function. Let me think. So yeah, I think the easiest way to do this is going to, yeah, actually let's do this instead. Often you'll see, well, let me do it and we'll talk through it. So instead of just calling delete user with that event, I'm going to write an inline arrow function here. And that arrow function is going to do this. So this is a function declaration. Just I could literally also just say function that, but arrow functions are tidier. So here, let's do this. I'm going to, so I'm still getting the event. So this function is being called with the event, and we're going to do something with it here. And what I'm going to do is, we don't really care about the event here that much. What we care about is the thing that it's attached to, and that thing is our user here that we're getting in from display user. So this is getting us the whole value of the thing. So if I console log my user, in fact, I'm just going to get rid of event here. If I console log my user out, now it should give me the data associated with that. Look at this. Cool. So instead of getting the event target, which is just a button, we're using something called a closure here. Fancy computer language term for basically saying, if we write a function that's in a scope, we can use data from that scope in that function even after the outer function is gone. So basically, we are in here, whatever values we use in here are going to be persisting throughout the running of the program, even after this function that we created it with is gone. It's a little bit of a slippery concept to get around. I think sometimes if you don't think about it too much, it makes more sense. And then if you think about it a little bit, it doesn't make any sense at all. And then when you think about it too hard, then it makes sense again. Your call on which side of that mountain you want to live on. But the important part, this is a pattern that you can follow. So what I can do here, instead of just console logging it out, I can call delete user with instead of the event, I'm going to call the actual user itself. Call it with the actual user itself. And so what is the important part of this user object that I care about when I want to delete it?
The ID.
ID. So if I just log out the ID, do it right? Did I do it right? Did I do it right at all? Delete user. There we go. So now this tells me which ID to delete. Look at that. And if I'm going to do this backwards, actually. If I want to delete it from just the page, any thoughts on how we might do that? I clearly have some ideas, but I'd like to hear from you.
Would you delete like the parent of the button?
Interesting. If we were just kind of running through this the first time, that might be a way to do it. We would need the event for that for sure, because we get the event target parent and delete it. That might stop working if the design changes though, right? But we have thought ahead a little bit. So what might be another way to try that?
Do is bracket notation.
Like remove or shit, what is it? Is it like pop or not pop, but like remove the index in the array?
Yeah. So since we have that data in the array, we can manipulate the array and then just say render out that list again, and it will display the current values that we have. And again, this is like super fundamental and important thing about keeping your data and your display separate. This lets you do whatever you want with your data without worrying about the display. And then once you set up how to display that data, it just works. So cool, yeah. So what does our user array look like now? This is a user array with a bunch of values in it, a bunch of objects. Each object has these things, including an ID. There are multiple ways of doing this. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them, and then I'll tell you my idea.
Would you remove, let's see, remove my brain wants to go like ID key equals ID minus 1.
Oh, interesting. Interesting approach. I love it. What if we've already deleted one of these? And so index 4 is number 6. That's not going to work, right? One thing we could do is like create a new array and then do a user array for each, and then go through each one, check to see if it matches the ID. If it doesn't, put it on the list, and then use that new list. But there's an easier way to do that. One of the power moves in JavaScript is learning how to use all of the array methods like map, find, reduce, Swiss Army knife, and for our purpose, filter. So what filter does is it looks at an array and it takes a function here. And so it's going to go through each thing in the array, just like for each does. Only it's going to return a new array with only the things in that array that this function returns true for. So that's a lot concept to get your head around. So if we just say, I don't know, true. If we just say true, this is going to return us a new array with all the things in it. If I say false, that's going to return an empty array. Neither of those are particularly useful for us. So we'd like to think about this function. We'd like to look at each item in that array and kind of like I mentioned just now, if the ID of that item matches the thing that we're trying to delete, we don't want it in there. So the true condition, so for each user, we're going to say user ID does not equal the ID that we're looking for. Let's say 3. And so now that gives us a new array with the ID 3 filtered out, 2, 4, 5. What it does not do is alter the original array. So we can use this to get a new array, and then we need to set the new array to that value. So let's see what that looks like. So here's our user array. And oh, look, I did a let, so I can replace it. So what I'd like to do is set the user array to that array. I want to filter out. A lot of times you'll see E for element. I want to filter out, or I want to keep in. It's interesting. The way that you read this and the way that it works is a little bit opposite. So in English, I would say, oh, I want to filter out these things. Whereas filter works, I want to filter out everything that is not, this is not true for it. It's a little bit backwards. Or I want to filter out not these things, I guess. So I'll say any element where the ID matches the user ID, those are the ones I want to get rid of. So I want to keep the ones that don't match. Yes, console log user array. So let's see if that does what we want. So I have user array here. That's going to have all the 6. If I delete number 2, great, we've logged out number 5. And if we look at it again, since we replaced it, that's the one we want. So now we have our new array. Fantastic. Now what we need to do is render our users again. Copied it and I just typed it out. Cool. So now we have our new array. We can just render out the user array again. So let's see what that looks like. Let's get rid of this one. Hey, look at that. Boom, boom, boom. Gone, gone, gone. Kill, kill, kill. Great. All of them are gone. If we reload, they're still there. So we've done the second part, removing a thing by an ID from the list. What we'd like to do now is remove it in the backend as well. Piece of cake. So I've already taken care of this part. This is called optimistic rendering sometimes. It means like, hey, we're going to change the interface even if the backend hasn't really done it yet, maybe. So let's make the backend do it, and then we'll think about that other thing in just a moment. So cool, look, I can do a fetch to do that. Fetch. And now I need to not just hit the base URI, but I need to give it the ID in there. So again, I'm going to use the template literal here. I'm going to say, here's our user API, and I need to add an ID to that. So this will be the user ID. So this is going to look like HTTP localhost users/3 or whatever. So this is just saying, well, it's not saying anything yet because we don't know what it's going to be. If we just did this, it would fetch that user for us and get that data. But we don't want that. We want to delete it. So let's put our headers in. Let's say a method is delete. Delete. And do we need a body? We don't, because it already knows which one it's getting from there. think that's all we need. So it is doing the thing. It is then going to display that, display the new list without the thing. So see, I'm going to delete myself from the database. Hopefully I'm okay in the real world. Cool, so lamb, it's gone from here. It's gone from user array. And is it gone in the database? It sure is. Great. If we did something wrong, like, again, had the wrong URL, users. Nope. If we did, maybe we had a wrong thing in here, maybe we had a backslash instead. Or had an extra dollar sign, I don't know. Had some typo in the URL. Cool, so we're getting our list here. And if I delete this, let's delete the first one, it's gone from the list, but, oh, it didn't delete from the database, did it? It did not. So I only want to remove it from the list if it actually came back okay. So I can just throw it in the .then. And I don't care what the return value is, because if it came back, it deleted the thing. So I'm just going to throw our optimistic rendering stuff in the .then. So if it works, it'll remove it from the front end. If not, it'll give us an error. So let's try that. These two. 4.4 not found. Did I do it wrong again? Did I not get rid of the thing that I needed? It's ready slash. That's the one. Cool. Bam, bam. There we are. And so, oh yeah, and actually we saw, since there was an error, it didn't delete it from the list. But in this case, it is deleting it. And in fact, it is deleting it from the database. And if we reload, we can see that same thing. Easy peasy. Not that easy. So cool. This is the general pattern you're going to follow with deleting stuff. The same thing's going to happen. I'm not going to do the patch right now because I don't want to build out the rest of the form. But it's the same kind of thing. You would take an input somewhere or a new value, and you would do a patch to the array. The only difference is that you would send it the thing that you're updating. Otherwise, it looks a lot like a delete. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there. I think we'll leave it there for now. That's a lot to think about for now. Any questions about any of the stuff we did? We did a lot. There's your mind just two throws right now.
Yeah, my mind's a little hectic, but I understand it in pieces. I am, because I'd forgotten about the code challenges. I am starting to now
That's good.
work about it, thinking like, again, knowing nothing about them, like, could you tell us a little about what it's like? Because like right now I'm thinking like if the code challenge is to like do all of this from the top of my head, like 0% confidence. Do that.
Yeah. So a couple things that hopefully will allay some of those fears. It will be a week-ish from now. So you'll have a full, or 6 days, I guess. So you'll have as much time as you spent so far to get this down. Plenty of time to practice. You won't have to write everything from scratch. Basically, the code challenge is going to give you the HTML. It might give you a little bit of code to start off with. I don't know if this one will, but it'll give you enough to get started and have like 3 things, like do this thing, do this thing, do this thing. And they're usually like make a fetch, put data on the page, do something when you click a button. Probably have a thing where you need to post or change something maybe, depending on which one. We have a bunch of them. Yeah, so this is probably even more than the code challenges, maybe. The other thing is we'll do it Tuesday we'll kind of like I'll give you we'll walk through a sample one, so you'll have a concrete idea of what it looks like. And then Wednesday we'll do a mock challenge. So we'll set it up exactly like the full thing. I'll give you the code, give you a repo. You'll work on it for 90 minutes, and that will give you a good idea of how you're going to do on the real thing, with test pressure and everything. And then Thursday we'll have the real thing. So Monday and Tuesday we will do just review and practice for the code challenge. That's usually pretty good. That's a good start. And
Yeah,
again,
no, it's good to know that we don't have to like write the whole HTML, like create the entire outline of a page and then like, because that was freaking me out.
no, all that the issue will be there for you. Yeah, for sure. And again, this is the first code challenge. If you do not meet all the requirements for this challenge, you'll have another shot during week 3. So it's impossible to just talk away your anxiety about it, but hopefully that helps a little bit. Yeah. Cool. What other questions do we have?
Will we have notes on the code challenge?
Can you say more?
Like, can we use our notes on the code challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. There is some documentation somewhere, maybe even in the text of the challenge itself, that says don't look at your notes or something like that. Hopefully no one who employs me will be watching it, but that's a bunch of bullshit. This should be replicating or simulating the same experience you would have if you were working, right, or working on your own project. As a professional developer, you're going to use your notes. You're going to, look at sample code. You're going to be looking things up. So my philosophy is we're all grown-ups here. And the code challenge is, this isn't high school. It's not you memorize the things. It's almost more for you than for me. I like to say, like, these code challenges are a tool to understand where your learning is. Whether you technically pass or fail the things really matters less. It's a good checkpoint for us to see, both you and me, where you're at with the stuff. If you go to the code challenge and you literally have no idea what to do, or if there's a part of it you're like, I just cannot get that part straight in my head, that is a great indicator for us that that's what we need to practice some more, or that's what we need to do some review on. Yeah, so use notes, look stuff up. The only thing I would say is, don't just copy paste code. You can, if you want, I'm pretty sure every code challenge we have, someone has a solution for on the internet somewhere. Don't just look up a solution and copy paste it. I've almost never had a problem with that. And last cohort, I had 2 people do that and submit the exact same code that they did not write. And I was like, you did exactly the same thing. That's the only time that's ever been a problem. There's ChatGPT now that will give you code that may or may not work. I recommend not doing that because, again, the thing that I want to see here is not whether you successfully pass the challenge, successfully, check all the boxes. The thing I want to see here is that you understand the stuff that we're doing. That's the important part. That's why someone asked about the grades in Canvas or Code Grade before, about all the check marks. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you get the stuff. If you've done a little bit of JavaScript before and you don't submit the homework or whatever on functions or whatever, I don't care. If you know the stuff, you know the stuff. That's the only thing that matters. Those checkboxes are only for people who aren't involved in teaching, to be frank. So yeah. Short answer, yeah, use notes. And end of rant. Cool. What other questions do we have? All right. That was a lot of information. That was a lot of stuff to take in. Practice. go through the video of this, try to understand all the bits and pieces one at a time, go through the practice exercises. Yeah, work with each other, pair program if you like. It's always help. If someone has a problem, feel free to ask, and you'll be doing the person who helps you a favor, because explaining stuff to someone else is the fastest way to shortcut the burn into your own brain. So do that. Otherwise, I'll be around to answer questions and everything. I'll post this video in the usual places on my playlist and in the channel. And yeah, we'll do stand down half an hour early today and hit that weekend. So yeah, cool. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see y'all in a little bit.